Gundam Build Fighters sadly had to end. And it ended well, I gotta say, even though I'd have preferred to see it go on. But if I'm honest, the characters had mostly run their course and had tied up their various story arcs pretty nicely. But I still love that series so much that I was delighted to find out that it had gotten a second season. And if you're expecting the next words out of my mouth to be, "Boy, was I wrong," joke's on you, sucker. I actually quite like the sequel series, Gundam Build Fighters Try. But it's also not nearly as good as the original. But it's also worth noting that a bad Gundam show, while disappointing, is still miles better than the best slice of life show, or even most mecha series coming out lately. But it does, sadly, not quite hit the same emotional heights that the first one did, at least not for me. But before we get any further, time to get into the series proper. The show takes place 7 years after the first Gundam Build Fighters, in a world where Gunpla battle is still pretty huge, but has become more of an established sport than it used to. The rules have been changed up quite a bit as well, as it's now 3-on-3 instead of 1-on-1, and the battle damage has been amped up through the roof. Your shit will get ruined, even with the battle damage set to B. A means that you'll be picking up shattered pieces of Gunpla if you lose. So I assume that if you lose when you're playing at battle damage level S, like a gun comes out and just shoots you. So, stakes are pretty high. But it is in this climate that aspiring Gunpla fighter Fumina Hoshino wants to play. She's 14 years old, though God knows I don't believe that for a second, and she's all alone in the Gunpla Battle Club at the same school that Sei Iori went to 7 years prior. You'd think it'd have gotten big after that, but apparently not. Her club is in danger of being swallowed up by the Plastic Model Kit Club, and she needs a crew to roll with if she wants to enter the tournament. Enter Kamiki Sekai, a martial artist and transfer student who can't find himself a martial arts club to join. Fumina immediately shanghais him and explains to him what Gunpla battle is. What, is he the only Japanese kid on the planet who doesn't know what that is or something? Hey, I'll make the jokes here, sweet cheeks. The only reason that Fumina is all by her lonesome is because her bestie decided to bail on her, that being one Yuma Kosaka. Yes, he's related to China Kosaka, and he's one of the top builders in Tokyo. He's a calculated, chill sort, whereas Fumina is perky and bubbly, and Sekai is all sorts of hot-blooded. After an initial challenge puts Yuma back on their side, the three form Team Tri-Fighters and take on the world. Or at least the greater prefectural area. At their back is Ramba Ral. Again. Yep, that Ramba Ral looking even more like a gay grandpa than last time. So in spite of being part of a really fun story, Sei and Reiji weren't exactly great main characters. Sei didn't have a whole lot going on, and Reiji was important in the main story, but more of a means to an end. In Gundam Build Fighters Try, the main characters are more fleshed out and developed. Sekai's problems are mostly physical, as he's a strong pilot but overexerts himself on the field. Yuma's issues are with his building skills and his own motivation. Fumina's issue is how she works with the rest of the crew and what sort of gunpla that leads her to use. But once they get through that and start working together properly, their problems are primarily on the battlefield and who they're going up against. The story progresses in a very simple fashion, much more in a typical sports series type of way. Team Tri-Fighters does a lot of your usual training, battling, and coming up with new techniques to win the day, whereas Sei and Reiji mostly just grit their teeth and fought harder. That doesn't mean it's bad, it just means it's different. It also has generally more goofing off from episode to episode, but in the name of world building. This means you get a much bigger scope of the world, but at the sake of depth. Familiar faces show up in this fairly often too. Meijin Kawaguchi returns, along with the Lady Meijin, to coach the team. Nils Nielsen, now Nils Yajima, shows up as well, but for the most part this is a story about a new crop of characters doing more sporty type things. I'm sure that there are a lot of you out there who already get the concept of the Boruto, but I'll break it down for those of you in the cheap seats. It's when the main characters in a sequel are the offspring of the last crop of main characters. The term is culled from Naruto, whose son Bolt is paired off with the other Naruto babies in any features to come. This series gets a little close to Boruto territory, but just skims the surface. While not enough time has passed in-universe to actually have offspring, there's an awful lot of siblings going on here. Sekai isn't related to Reiji, though I thought he was going to be for sure. Yuma is obviously China Kosaka's little brother. Gyanko is the little sister of the first rival from Build Fighters, and Mirai Kamiki, Sekai's big sister, works for the same agency that Kirara did in the first series. Look, folks, I know it's cool to have that connection, but it's okay not to have legacy hooks in characters. I don't very often get to talk about this, but the show does have some very interesting character designs. The girls specifically are all colorful and stand out in the ocean of idols and other such crap that's in modern anime. This is in a direct contrast to the first series, where the ladies were limited to slender, and slender with varyingly large breasts. Gyanko is a bit of a chubby bunny, Shia Kijima is a little stick of a thing, Fumina is, well, yeah, I'll believe that that's a girl of 14 years old, when the moon falls out of the sky. Seriously though, I'm making jokes, but the fact that they're not all built on the same base model is almost kind of novel these days. Especially compared to the last series, which wasn't really great about this sort of thing. And while a fair few of them fit into the same kind of quote-unquote romantic interest mold for Sekai, it's nice to have some character diversity overall. When there are enough women in the cast, you can have individuals. And with as many anime as are out right now that are just filled with ladies, there's not really a whole ton of character diversity out there. And sadly, that's because it's made for a male audience, even though it's crammed full of girls. So, good on you, Gundam Build Fighters Try, for being inclusive in the way that only the Japanese can be. Alright, so let's lay down some truth here. Try is not as good as the first one. This is because it's almost a completely different genre. This is more of a proper sports show than the original is, and it has some of the foibles of those shows too, magnified by the lack of weird stuff going on in the background. There aren't any big villains until the latter half of the show, and while they fight hard battles across the whole breadth of the series, they don't really have the emotional resonance of the first one. But I have to emphasize this. It's still really good. This is a great show and is ludicrously entertaining for old-school Gundam fans. It just lacks the interconnectedness that the other characters had in the original Gundam Build Fighters, which makes it only a bit weaker. Even more than the original, this is Gundam noob friendly, and the designs are more simple and straightforward. The Build Burning Gundam isn't really all that far removed from the original God Gundam, or Burning Gundam, if you're from the States. The Lightning Gundam is mostly a repainted Rigazi, which you probably don't know unless you've seen Char's Counterattack, soon to be available from Nozomi Entertainment. But it is one of my favorite mobile suits. The Winning Gundam is also unmistakably Gundam-y, and it's a good way to bring people into the idea of SD Gundams as a legitimate thing, and not just some weird toy. The series also features less overt in-jokes, but way more deep cuts, like the Tryon 3. Boy, that's a weird one for sure. Now I gotta lay down some hate. The original had a real passable dub. This one? This is not passable. Even for a Singapore broadcast dub or whatever, this is a real stinker. Sekai randomly gets a British accent in a fair few of his scenes. Fumina and you are both okay, but they put a lot of emphasis on the wrong syllable pretty often, and the writing is really phoned in, almost as bad as the acting. The other major problem here is that this series is all set up for a third season that would have assumedly followed Team Tri-Fighters and wrapped up with more of Gundam Build Fighters Original's crew, but that hasn't materialized yet. There are some OVAs on the way for both series. There's a photo novel out as well, so Gundam Build Fighters hasn't run out of steam, but we still haven't actually seen the third season come to fruition yet. Hopefully the OVAs do well enough to get that third season off the ground, but this show came out in 2014, right hot on the heels of Gundam Build Fighters. It's 2016 at time of recording, and we haven't seen anything. I don't want to say that the ship has sailed, but it is definitely pulling out to sea. More to the point, Build Fighters Try is a very different beast than its predecessor. It's a story more about a team of kids fighting their way to the top, and less about the underlying mysteries. It's more pure sport than the first one, and that doesn't make it bad, it just makes it very different. While it doesn't hit the dizzying heights that the first one did, it still far outstrips a lot of other shows on the field nowadays, and will keep you enraptured for the duration. So while Gundam Build Fighters was great, Gundam Build Fighters Try is still good with flashes of greatness in it. And while that may seem damned by faint praise, considering how I think that most other anime that comes out these days is pretty much at the bottom of the pit, well, take what you can get. Well, what do you folks think? Turn A, original. Some tall geese action up in here. You know, some people have been trying to tell me that I have a Gunpla collecting problem, and I say I don't have a problem. The only problem is that I don't have enough Gunpla. That being said, it's going to be back to normal things for Profi Wafikins here. So hopefully, after this lovely little excursion where I got to overview and outline some of my favorite shows that have come out in recent years, I don't have to watch some crap. So, fingers crossed, kids. We'll see you next time.